Good morning, grandkids. Well, this morning it's time to read another chapter in The Forest Phantom. This is chapter 6. I was sitting up in my bed, my hands resting on a book in my lap, when Dad gave a soft tap on the door and came in. He sat down in a chair near the bed. We started talking in low voices. I was anxious to hear anything he may have heard in town and whether we were going to the woods tonight. The first thing he did was apologize for tonight because we weren't going. He was too tired to sack out in the woods tonight. Well, it wasn't too productive in town, he said, but I did get some information that cleared up what was niggling in the back of my brain. Do you remember about a teen girl who went missing a little over a year ago? Mr. and Mrs. Connor was her parents. After she went missing, they moved down the hill into the village of Licksville. Yeah, I do remember that. There wasn't too much fuss made over it, so we all just sort of forgot about it. I think most people just figured she ran away, I said. I don't remember talking to her parents. Her dad was always in a bad temper, it seemed like. No one liked being around him much. His daughter's name was Audrey, I remember. I never saw her much, but when I did, she was always talking about cities and how she was going to get out of this place as soon as she could. People have just assumed that she ran away. Dad sat there, leaning on one elbow, thinking. You know, old man Forrester, who lives across the creek, he's always been such a loner, and if anyone tries to talk with him, all he does is grunt out any kind of a reply. I remember he used to wink at her, she said, whenever he did come into town for anything, which isn't very often still. But she'd always laugh and tell people that old Mr. Forrester was flirting with me. I said, maybe we could go over there and talk to Mr. Potter, who farms down the road past him. Ask him if he knows anything about Forrester. I could go talk to him. His son James is one of my friends. Maybe while you're talking with someone else. That's a good idea. Maybe I'll mosey down the hill to Licksville and talk to the Connors, if they still live there. See if they still think their girl ran away, or even if they ever hear from her, Dad said. We felt like that was a plan, and Dad got up and headed to the door. He looked back and said, I'll try to stop work tomorrow early enough to head down to Licksville. Just so you know, I've been talking to your mom about this, so if she brings anything up to you, it's okay if you talk with her. I'm not trying to keep any of this under wraps from her. Okay, Dad. Good night. Good night, son. The next morning, sitting at breakfast, it was finally just Mom and me. She said, your dad's been talking to me about what's happening in the woods, Tucker. I'm really getting worried. Don't worry, Mom. That whatever it is up in the woods seems harmless enough so far, I said with a slight smile. We sort of made a plan last night. 2 different people that we will each talk to and maybe learn a little something. While I'm waiting for Dad to finish plowing today, would you like for me to pull some weeds in the garden? I saw that they're growing up in there again. You can do anything helpful out there that you see needs doing, Mom laughed as she got up and headed into the laundry room. Champ came running inside, and I said, Hey, Champ, you want to come help me weed the garden? Heck no, and he ran on into his bedroom. I laughed and went on outside and got busy. I didn't think Dad would be long out in the field. That job was probably about ended. We'd had a couple of light snow days, so winter would soon be here. Nothing was growing much. Even this garden was about finished. Dad and I would start being mostly busy on fixing up worn-out equipment, I supposed. Finally, Dad came to the house, and we all had hot beef stew for lunch and biscuits, one of my favorite meals. Champ was handing bits of biscuit and a bit of meat under the table to Rascal while I was thinking about my friend James. I wondered if he'd be down at the creek fishing again. I didn't want him to go with me up to his house when I went over there to talk to his dad. I didn't want too many people involved in this, and I know that Dad didn't. When I was finished eating, I went to my room, got my coat, gloves, and went back out. I saw that Dad was gone from the table to get his gear, so I went on outside. He finally came out, and we went to the garage and got in the truck. Dad said, "I'll drop you off down at the creek road, and I'll drive on down to Licksville, see if the Connors still live there. I wouldn't mention anything about what's going on up in the woods." "No, I won't, Dad." When he got down to the road, I jumped out, and he turned and headed on down the hill. I crossed the stone bridge, which was right across from the long road coming down from our farm. I started hiking up along the farms until I got to the road that ran past the front of the houses and barns up there. I turned left to Mr. Potter's farms, away from Old Man Forrester, whose house was tucked in that corner against the mountain on that side of the creek. I finally stepped up on Potter's porch and knocked. I heard feet shuffling to the door, and soon it was opened by Mrs. Potter, wrapping a baggy sweater tighter around her against the chill. "Well, hi, Tucker. What are you doing way over here today?" she smiled. "I thought I'd stop and chat with Mr. Potter a while, see if he has anything good that he's writing about to put in the newspaper," I said. She opened the screen, saying, "Well, come on inside and let's get this door shut. I can't seem to keep enough wood in the stove today." I hurried in as the door shut behind me. "Go on," she said. "He's in his office. Probably be glad to have some company." I walked down the hall to his office and poked my head inside and said, "Mind some company for a bit?" "Sure thing," he said with a smile. He laid down his pencil and motioned to a comfortable chair by his desk. I sat down, and he rolled back his wheelchair and turned it facing me. He had arthritis in his hips so bad that he could hardly walk, and spent most of his time in that wheelchair. "What brings you by, Tucker? Just a friendly visit, or you got some news for me to write?" "Well, both, I reckon," I said. "But my dad wanted me to be sure and ask if you'd made any more moonshine lately." We both laughed. "Hey, my wife, Letty, she really got on to me after that last batch I brewed up," he said. "Don't know if I can get away with making any more." "Sure made my hips feel better, though," and we laughed again. "Well," I snickered, "I'm sure Mrs. Potter wasn't wanting you to get drunk and fall out of your chair, maybe." "Yeah, she'd have a hard time picking me up, I'll bet." And he rolled his eyes. "So you got any news for me?" he said. "Well, I've been seeing a lot of grouse in the lower edges of the woods Wondered if others knew there might be some good hunting right now. You men could get a hunting party organized and bring in some good meat, I told him. Now there's a bit of news, he said, as he pushed back up to his desk and picked up his pencil and wrote a couple of notes on his notebook paper. He had scraps of paper scattered over the top of his desk. I wondered how much was something useful. I also noticed that he had on a bulky sweater, just like his wife. And it did seem a little chilly in the house to me. I said, you know, I've been chopping way too much wood for us to use in our stove, and I've been giving some to various people to get rid of it and to help out. Could I unload a bunch of wood onto you? I asked him. Sure, I'm taking whatever you want to unload, and thanks, he said. Great. I'll load up the back of Dad's truck and he'll drive it over later. I sat there a minute while he was jotting notes, then said, when Dad and I were in the woods chopping all that wood, my dog was acting crazy. He'd stare off into the woods and whine. He finally turned tail and took off down the road for home, like something was after him. Strangest thing. He never acts like that, and he's been in them woods ever since he was born. Sam stopped writing and thought a minute. Then he said, that's weird that you said that. A few days ago, I saw Dan Streets from the gas station, and he told me just about the same story. Better be careful up there. There could be a bear in there, coming down looking for food. That's odd. Maybe I'll go see him, see if he saw anything. We both sat there a minute, then he said, well, I'll put this in the paper and get it out today, see if we can get a little hunting party together. Okay, thanks. I'd better get on back home. Dad will come up later with the wood. Mrs. Potter walked with me to the door. Nice of you to offer us some wood, Tucker. We've been running out and it's been getting pretty cold and not going to get any warmer. That's okay. Glad to do it. We'll keep bringing up some to you throughout the winter. Must be hard for you with Mr. Potter in a wheelchair. We'll take care of it. And I gave her a big smile as I went out the door. Bless you, Tucker, she called to me as she shut the door. When I finally got home, I saw Dad in the garage, and I went on in there. I wanted to know if we was going to the woods tonight, and also what he found out talking to the Connors. So next Friday, when we come back to the story, we'll find out if he found anything out interesting from the Connors, and what they plan to, if they're going to get on up in the woods tonight. I hope they do. They need to. They haven't been there for a bit. So I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, grandkids.